with the Boring Company, it's about looking at infrastructure projects which typically take decades and billions of dollars, and looking to reduce the complexity of that. Is that how you see the world? Do you see the things that don't work and can be made better?
No. I don't sort of like look at things and say, okay, what's the rank ordered, business opportunity from a financial standpoint, or anything like that. It's really just like there's some things that don't seem to be working, that are important for for our life and for the future to be good. And I have to say that if one were to say, like, if one were to do a risk-adjusted rate of return estimate on various industry opportunities, I would put like basically building rockets and cars pretty close to the bottom of the list. That they would have to be the dumbest things to do, just because you look at the auto industry, and in the U.S. auto industry, the only two companies that haven't gone bankrupt, at least at some point, are Tesla and Ford. Every other company got bankrupt or was failing and got acquired. There's only two companies that haven't gone bankrupt, and there's a big graveyard of companies that did. So, and you're going up against entrenched competitors. There's no... I gave basically both SpaceX and Tesla from the beginning a probability of less than 10% of likely to succeed.
So why do it?
Well, in the case of SpaceX, I just kept wondering why we were not making progress towards sending people to Mars, why we didn't have a base on the moon. Where are the sort of space hotels that were promised in 2001 in the movie? It's like, it just wasn't happening year after year. It was getting me down. I look at the NASA website. I was like, where does it say when we're going to Mars? It doesn't. So initially for SpaceX, for example, I thought, well, the genesis of SpaceX was not to create a company, but really how do we get NASA's budget to be bigger? That was initially the goal. So I came up with this small philanthropic mission, which would be to send a small greenhouse to the surface of Mars. It's called Mars Oasis. And then upon landing, the seeds would be in dehydrated nutrient gel, hydrated upon landing, and you'd have this little greenhouse, and then the money shot would be green plants against a red background. So I recently learned that money shot has a meaning that that I wasn't aware of, but I think that would get people excited about rekindles the spirit of Apollo, essentially. And as I got more and more into what it would take to do that, I learned that the fundamental issue is actually the cost of access to space. Rockets were super expensive, and the cost per pound or kilogram to orbit had actually gone up over the years, not down. And it was like, okay, well, it won't matter if we are able to do this philanthropic mission and it generates a lot of will to go to Mars. That's not going to matter if there's no way. So after my second or third trip back from Russia, I was like, whoa, there's got to be a way to build rockets. There's got to be a way to solve this rocket problem. I started reading a lot of books on rockets and did a sort of a first principles analysis of a rocket, just broke down the materials that are in a rocket, what would it cost to buy those materials, what versus the price of the rocket, and there's a gigantic difference between the raw material cost of the rocket and the finished cost of the rocket. So there must be something wrong happening in going from the constituent atoms to the final shape. And I found that certainly to be true. And then why weren't people trying to make reusability work? It was very difficult to make rocket reusability work. And then unfortunately the space shuttle ended up being a counterexample of don't try to make reusability work, because the space shuttle ended up costing more per flight than an expendable vehicle of equivalent capability. So for a long time, people were using the space shuttle as an example of why reusability is dumb. You can't take a single case example and make an entire theory out of it. So there's no question in my mind that if you could reuse the rockets, it has to be true reuse, which means rapid and complete reuse. The problem with the space shuttle is only a portion of the system came back. Like the big orange tank, which was also the primary airframe, was discarded every time, and the parts that were reused were incredibly difficult to refurbish. So the only kind of reuse that matters is if it's rapid and complete. So that the only thing you're changing between flights, apart from scheduled maintenance, is the propellant. So we embarked upon that journey to create SpaceX in 2002. In the beginning, I wouldn't even let my friends invest because I didn't want to lose their money. I thought it was like, I'd rather lose my own money. So, we almost did die at SpaceX actually. So I budgeted for 3 flights. I mean, technically, I did have a plan where I had the money from PayPal. I had like about 180 million from PayPal. And I thought, I'll allocate half of that to SpaceX and Tesla and Solar City, and that should be fine. I'll have 90 million. Like, it's just lots, But then what happened is things cost more and took longer than I thought. So I had a choice of either put the rest of the money in or the companies are going to die. And it's like, so I ended up putting all the money in and borrowing money for rent from friends. 2008 was brutal. 2008 we had the 3rd consecutive failure of the Falcon 1 rocket for SpaceX. Tesla almost went bankrupt. We closed our financing round 6 p.m. Christmas Eve 2008. It was the last hour of the last day that it was possible. We would have gone bankrupt 2 days after Christmas otherwise. And I got divorced. That was like rough, man. Permanent scar tissue there.
Well, it poses a question, or maybe you just answer the question of why is no one else doing these things?
What's your pain threshold? Well, if it's real high. I mean, SpaceX is alive by the skin of its teeth, so is Tesla. If things had just gone a little bit the other way, both companies would be dead. And I like one of the most difficult choices I've ever faced in life was in 2008. I think I had maybe $30 million left, or $30 or $40 million left in 2008. And I had 2 choices. I could put it all into one company, and then the other company would definitely die, or split it between the 2 companies. But if I split it between the 2 companies, then both might die. When you put your blood, sweat, and tears into creating something, or building something, it's like a child. And so it's like, which one am I going to let one starve to death? I couldn't bring myself to do it, so I split the money between the 2. Fortunately, thank goodness, they both came through.
We've got a question from the audience that builds on that. What was your biggest failure and how did it change you? What was your biggest failure and how did it change you?
I have to really think hard about that. Failure. Never heard of it.
There's your answer.
Well, there's a ton of failures along the way, that's for sure. Like I said, as I said, for SpaceX, the first 3 launches failed. And we're just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the 4th launch. If that 4th launch had failed, we would have been dead. So multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
How do you plan a business where you know, the rocket business, you know some of these things are going to blow up on the launch pad? How does the business plan work?
I don't really have a business plan. Yeah, I haven't had a business. I had a business plan way back in the Zip2 days. But these things are just always wrong. So I just didn't bother with business plans after that. Yeah. I mean, I think, wishful thinking for sure is a source of many problems in many walks of life. Business or personal wishful thinking causes a lot of trouble. You really have to ask, whether something is true or not. Does it make sense? And if it ever feels like too easy, it probably is. But for all the drama of SpaceX, I think Tesla's actually been probably 2/3 of my total drama dose of a time. Tesla's a drama magnet. It's crazy.
How do you? I mean, a lot of people want to know. You're managing 3 or 4 companies now, each of them trying to do something revolutionary, each of them challenging a business that has historically been regarded as impossible to challenge or disrupt. How do you prioritize? How do you prioritize between the different companies? How do you prioritize? How do you spend your time?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, could I trouble you for a water? I've got a bit of a cold, so my voice is a bit hoarse. It's okay. In terms of time priority, for business time, almost all of it is really dedicated to SpaceX and Tesla. It may sound like I've got a lot of different endeavors, but it's overwhelmingly SpaceX and Tesla in terms of time allocation. So it's, and then for non-business stuff, it's almost entirely kid stuff. My kids are here today, actually. Brought them along to South by Southwest. Hope they're having a good time. They went and saw the Westworld exhibit, or it's really amazing. If you haven't seen the Westworld, what do you call it, exhibit or a...
I don't know what you call it. I think you just call it Westworld at this point.
Theme park.